Hello, welcome. My name is Roland. Today I want to continue talking about the Sermon on the Mount. And I'll begin by reading. We'll start with Matthew chapter 6. This is an ongoing series. I'm reading from the Khabouris manuscript, an ancient manuscript in the Syriac language. Christ spoke a Syriac language, he spoke Aramaic. And it's a beautiful translation, painstaking translation into the English of the Khabouris manuscript. And I think you will enjoy it. If you haven't heard my other videos, lectures in this series, you really ought to. I start at the very beginning, and I think this is like number 15 now, or number 16. Excellent, excellent series. Because I go beyond just the words, to try to fill in some of the practical applications. Okay. So hopefully you'll find it very useful. So let's begin chapter 6. Look at your almsgiving, that it not be done before men, in order that you may be seen by them. If so, there is no reward for you from your Father in heaven. Therefore, when you are almsgiving, do not blow a horn before you do so, as those of two faces in the synagogue and public places, in order that they may be praised by other men. Truly I say to you, their reward is received. But when you do your almsgiving, your left hand is not to know what your right hand is doing. When your almsgiving is done under cover, your Father, who sees under cover, will reward you in the open. And as you pray, do not do as those of two faces, who dearly love to stand before the synagogues and in the marketplaces for prayer, so that they will be seen by men. Truly I say unto you, their reward is received. Instead, when you pray, go into your inner chamber and shut your door, and pray unto your Father, who sees what is under cover. He will reward you in the open. So, these are very beautiful verses. You see how important why you do something. Christ said you cannot serve God and Mammon at the same time. He said, you're either for me or against me. Like I've said many times, life is decisive. You pray to your Father in heaven, or you give your alms or give to the poor out of the goodness of your heart, okay? And do it in privately where nobody knows. Then you can receive a reward from your Heavenly Father. But if you do it so that others will see you do it, then your reward is that they see you. And there's no reward from your Heavenly Father, you see. So, you're either serving God or you're serving Mammon. If you're doing something to impress others, to make yourself look good, to make a good impression, and so on, you're serving them. See, you know what you're doing? You're basically, if you are doing something in order that others see you do it, so they'll think well of you, you are basically putting them on a pedestal. You're making them into a little tin horn god, see, who then worships you. See, you esteem them, you care what they think of you. What difference does it make what others think of you? See, but you care what they think of you. And so you bow and scrape and do things so that they will see you and then think well of you. So you create them to make gods out of them, so that they as gods will then worship you and make you into a god. See? See how that works? So that's not very nice. Okay? It's phony. It's false. And you're harming them. If they see you doing it, see, People are smart. They see what you're up to, and they judge you for it. So they see you do it, so that they'll see you. Okay, well, maybe they'll say, "Oh, you're such a wonderful person," but inside they're thinking, they're not thinking you're so great. Okay, because they see that you're serving them, and they know that they're not so great. And yet you bow and scrape and serve so that you look good in front of them. So you're making them into a god, see? But then they turn around and do the same to you. So you pretend not to see their faults, and they pretend not to see your faults. And you worship them or pretend to, see? And they worship you or pretend to, see? So it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere. But these things should be done. See, when you do something, Christ said, the translation that we're familiar with is, let your left hand not know what your right hand is doing. Okay? In other words, if you're going to do something, just do it. If you have something to say it. If you have something to do, do it. If somebody has a need and you can help them, then help them. If you can't help them, then don't help them. Okay? If you're moved to help them, then help them. If you're not moved, then don't help them. See, if you can do a kindness for someone, then do it. But just do it because you see. See, remember now the relationship. You should watch the video I just made, where I talk about how to relate to the inner light when you are faced with another person, maybe someone who's doing something naughty, or they're asking you to do something, and maybe they're asking you in a mean or a bossy way. And then remember what I said. I said to check with your intuition and see what it says, what it wordlessly says. And if wordlessly you see that it's wise, or it's the right thing to do, or it makes sense to do what they're asking you, then do it. Not because they're telling you to do it, but because you see that it's wise. See, you're internally motivated. On the other hand, if they ask you to do something and you see that it's not your job, or it wouldn't be the right thing to do, or there's some kind of something's holding you back, then just don't do it. You're sorry, can't do it. See how simple? You obey your intuition. You look to your intuition, which is from God. Okay? Because you can perceive in the inner light from God. You look to it first, last, and always. And then what you do is based on what you see in the inner light, or what you're moved to do by the inner light. See? You're not reacting, you're not obeying someone else. You're doing what you see as wise. Okay? So you see the principle? So the same principle applies now when we're talking about doing something for someone. A kindness, giving them something, helping them out. You're doing it. See, what most people do is they see someone in need, or they see someone that could use some help, and then, or that one, it's obvious that you could do something for them, okay? Or they even ask for it. So then, here's what most people do. They do one of two things. They do it so that they will look good, which is what Christ was just talking about in the Sermon on the Mount. The other reason why they do it is because when somebody asks them to do something, or they see something that there's a need, they resent it. They don't really want to do it. They resent knowing about it. They resent being asked to do it. And then the resentment, because resentment is wrong, makes them feel guilty. Okay? They feel guilty because the resentment is wrong. So then, instead of just quietly seeing their own selfishness, see, that's what you need to do, is just see your reluctance. It may not be wrong. Your reluctance may not be wrong. It may be okay to be reluctant. Maybe maybe you shouldn't help them. Maybe they should do it for themselves. Maybe someone else should help them. Maybe it's none of your concern. Your first obligation is to your family. So that's perfectly fine. But because you resent it, You see, the guilt for resenting. See, so your wrong is resenting in the light. That's your, in the light you see, you feel their guilt, but it's for resenting. That's your wrong. Okay, so feeling guilty, then they want to make up for the guilt. They want to assuage guilt. They want to pacify the guilt. So they go ahead and do for the other person. Maybe go overboard and do too much for the other person, or do something that's not their job, or do for the other person what the other person should do for themselves. See? But it's another way of escaping from the inner light. See, from not admitting the truth, which is the resentment is wrong. Whether you should give or whether you should not give, see, that's another matter. Okay? But the resentment is wrong, see? But they don't want to see the resentment. They don't want to feel the pain for the resentment, admit their own resentment. So instead they do for the other person, which is also serving another person. See, if you're doing something to serve another, to build them up, like you're stooping like a god to help them, see? Not only do you probably weaken them with your help, but you also tempt them to resent you because they see your attitude. So if someone asks you to do something or you see a need, then just observe. Don't resent it. And then, without having resented, now with clear seeing in the inner light, you clearly see, you'll see whether you should or not. Maybe there's no need to help, so you go about your business. On the other hand, if you can do a kindness, and you see that you can do a kindness, then just do it. Okay? Don't sit around and think, well, should I or shouldn't I? Just do it then, okay? Because if when you do respond, okay, now let's say you do good spontaneously. See, in your heart you see that they need some help, and you help them spontaneously. It's beautiful because it's an unbroken flow in the inner light from God. You're actually serving God. See, you're helping your fellow human being, but you're helping them because you see in God's light that you could or you should. So it's unbroken. You see the need, and you respond from the goodness of your heart. Okay? So it's like it, but if you hesitate, if you stop and hesitate and hem and haw and think, well, if I do this, I'll be late, or if I do this, then they'll ask for more, or if I do this, then I won't be able to do that, and see, you start thinking all the things, then you may still help them, but it won't have the spontaneity in it. See, it'll be something that you're doing too late to assuage guilt or to get it over with or some other reason other than the pure goodness of your heart. See? Okay. So that principle applies. So now you see how it applies to helping others. See? But now here's the thing. A lot of times you shouldn't be helping others. They should be doing for themselves. Okay? You weaken them if you do too much for them. A lot of parents know that. If you do too much for your kid, okay, then it weakens them. And they resent you because somehow they sense all of your helpfulness and you're doing for them. They sense that it's weakening them. See? Or they sense that your worry. See, there's something unhealthy about worry. It's one thing to be concerned, but it's something else to be worried. So in worrying, you do something. And a lot of times the reason you're doing it is because, once again, you resented them. See, kids make a lot of demands, take a lot of time, and most parents are selfish. See, they'd rather be texting or watching a ball game or shopping or getting something at Starbucks or talking to their friends. They're selfish. See? And they resent the child's demands. And so the resentment makes them guilty, and then they do to make themselves look good or feel good. They want to look good in their own eyes, see, and they want to cover up the guilt for resenting, and so they do, see, but it's phony. See, it's self-serving is what it is. It's self-serving. Okay? So the principle is you do out of the goodness of your heart. Now that same principle of just acting out of the goodness of your heart. That applies too sometimes when when somebody could use a little bit of correction or a little bit of truth. Okay? Or they're coming up with something and an answer is required. Then you check with your intuition, what you wordlessly know deep down, what you wordlessly know in your heart, what you see. And sometimes something will come to you, then just blurt it out. See? Just blurt out what comes to you from the inner light. Of course, you have to be meditating. See, a lot of people blurt things out, but they blurt out some goofy idea that came out of their imagination. See, or out of their intellect, which is more likely to be inspired by the guy with the horns than it is good. You see what I mean? But if you're calm and you have been meditating properly, and then you are there, and there's some kind of something between you and another person, some kind of an interaction, and then you just speak spontaneously from the heart. See, then it's innocent, it's guileless, it's just the truth, and it has a very powerful impact. But you mustn't try to have an impact. See, that would ruin it. No, you just speak. Okay, what comes to you, and if nothing comes to you, then you don't say anything. See how that works? But it has a nice effect because it's pure, it's guileless. There's no guile in it, no pre-planning. See, no considering of the consequences, no considering what you're going to lose by saying it. You just say it. It just blurts out, and it's beautiful. See? Maybe what they need, it's probably what they need to hear. But what do most people do? Well, they don't say anything, they become resentful, and then they say something out of resentment. Or they look into their mind and they dig up some answer. See? Or they should say something, but then they hesitate, and then they say it too late, the timing's off. Or they kind of plan what they're going to say, or they couch their words, see, in the soft, tone down their words and try to make everything smoother, and they want to rock the boat, and so that everything changes. No longer is it pure and innocent. Now it's self-serving again. See? So a lot of parents, they plan some speech they're going to give it to their kids, and then they fall flat on their face because there's no love in it. See? It's self-serving somehow. So, okay, so I hope you enjoyed this little discussion of the Sermon on the Mount. And hopefully I'll see you when I make my next video, Lord willing, about the Sermon on the Mount.